sitting at the back of the class.
Hello. I think this microphone's on. Oh, it isn't. Councillors, chief officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to welcome the worshipful the Mayor.
Thank you. Be seated, please. Welcome, members, officers, members of public, those who are watching from home on webcast. Good evening. May I now ask everyone who are present here to kindly put your telephones on silent mode, and if you can put it off, please. Just want to remind you about social media policy. During the meeting, public may use social media, but not the councillors. Do all members have agenda papers for tonight? There are three papers, three set of documents. One is the big one, heavy one, and then the supplementary agenda, and then the additional information for the meeting. So these three documents will be used for today's meeting. I would like to remind the members that all debates should be done through the mayor, and any points of order can only be about breaches of constitutional law, constitution or law. And I wish to see fairness and courtesy in discussions with no interruptions or talking during the contribution of others. The budget setting meeting is one of the most important meetings of the year, and we need to have full fairness to take place, which is best done by letting everyone speak. This is also part of our unanimous commitment to civility in public life. Finally, please do not turn your microphones until you have asked you to speak. The microphones are connected with the video cameras used for a webcast, and so if you press them too soon, they move from the person who's actually speaking. So thank you, and we will move to agenda item first. Apologies for absence. I have Councillor Ranjit Gill, Councillor Bishnu Gurung, Councillor Karamat Malik, Councillor Danish Said, and Councillor Sukhbir Dhaliwal. I understand that Mr. Dhaliwal is in hospital. On behalf of all the members, I wish him speedy recovery. Councillor Trapp.
Yeah, a slight amendment, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Malik was able to join us, so can he be struck, please, from the apologies? He is present, and I've got two apologies for lateness. That's Councillor Smith and Councillor Vikram Garawal.
Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 2, announcements. I have 3 announcements to make. So members will be aware that we have by-elections scheduled for 9th of March 2023 for the vacancy in Heston West Ward. We are therefore all bound by the requirements of pre-election rules during tonight's meeting. To clarify, while it is perfectly legitimate to be political, discussions on the item on tonight's agenda, I would like ask members to avoid acting in a way they may appear to be electioneering. In practice, this means that while members can make political contribution to any debate, I do not want to hear any member saying vote for one particular party or not vote for any other. And to be clear, for the reason of full transparency, I wish to declare that one of the candidates is my wife. However, I have taken legal advice from monitoring officer, so you can't get rid of me today. So I can still run the meeting. However, may I ask members to be mindful and need to talk about by-election over the course of meeting from this point. Thank you. And on totally different matter, I would like to thank you all of those who attended my fundraising last Friday. As you know, this event was arranged to help to raise awareness and fundraising for my charity, Polio and Children in Need. And you will be pleased to know that we have raised £11,000 for that night. I thank you all for the contribution. And now the third announcement, members must be aware that on Thursday, myself, leader, and other small group of councillors and officers met Her Majesty, the Queen Consort, as she visited Boston Manor House. She was at the house to see how it has been restored and to meet the architects, craftsmen, apprentices, and volunteers who played a very important role in restoring the house from a former glory. The refurbishment of Boston Manor House is something that the council has been closely involved in, and I hope all the members will feel a sense of pride at its forthcoming reopening to the public, the importance of which is clearly underlined by the royal visit. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Councillor Rajwa to speak on a sad loss to the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Sad loss indeed. I know it's common knowledge across the council. And despite him asking me not to say anything because he hates being embarrassed and everyone looking at him, I'm very sad to announce that Clive Palfreyman, now Executive Director of Finance and Resources, will be leaving the council in May. But considering this is his last borough council, I thought, let's embarrass him anyway. Clive joined the council about 6 months after I was first elected. So actually, much of what has gone on over the last 13 years, Clive has been involved with very intimately. I'd like to say he had more hair then, but I'd be lying. But he's really steered the ship, as it were. And we've gone through some incredible challenges with austerity and now the cost of living crisis. And one thing that you can always guarantee with Clive is a very steady hand and a quiet confidence and can-do attitude. It's quite fascinating, actually. The cabinet and chief officers did a MBTI exercise, which is about personalities and preferences. And it taught me a couple of things. One, that my cabinet is full of extroverts, which is great. I'm amongst the only introvert there. But it was quite funny when the organisers had us line up from extrovert to introvert. All the way over there, Billy No Mates was Clive Palfreyman as the steady hand over there, and everyone sort of went, yeah, that's not surprising whatsoever. I think, Clive, what I would say to you is, despite our disagreements in this chamber, I think everyone would agree that you were a trusted confidant, someone that you could talk to and get sound advice from. You're an honest broker all the time. I'm in a way delighted that you're off to Southwark to replicate some of our successes there. And I think for me, what better legacy of you, and I said this to the team when I met them, is that sense of confidence your team have. No, I'm going to carry on. The sense of confidence that your team has, and the way you've developed your team to some fine finance professionals, but also the procurement service and governance as well. I will feel the loss immensely, as will we all. But absolute thank you from the bottom of my heart and the administrations for all the service that you've given. You're still here for a little while, and we're going to extract as much from you as we can in that time. But all the best of luck in Southwark.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rajvat. Normally, the announcement is only from the cabinet, but this time I'm pleased if Councillor Thampson wants to say a few words.
I said to Clive outside the chamber a few minutes ago that I was going to say a few words, and his response was "don't," and that about sums up, as you've said. This is very embarrassing for you, so I will be very short. I was just trying to think what we expect and what we want in a council officer, in a leading council officer. And I suppose we need somebody who has shrewd judgment, because let's face it, working with politicians is not the easiest task at times. We want somebody who has fairness, they have tenacity, because I think you, Clive, in all that you've done, all my dealings with you since you joined the council, I think you said in 2011, you've constantly striven in all that you've done, all the different roles you've had as you work your way up the system, to improve the quality of life of our residents by looking after the money. And without the money, there's not a lot we can do. I think we sort of forget that we sometimes used to call people in your role a public servant. And I think that word service is an important one. And I think you see your role as serving the public good. When I came on the council many moons ago, I was probably convinced that most council officers were raving, card-carrying lefties who were there to make my life difficult and would have no time, and they would spill all the beans and all the rest of it. But Clive, I've got no idea what your politics are, which I think that is actually a testimony to your professionalism. No idea where you stand on the big issues in life, but I do know that in terms of doing this job, you have committed yourself constantly. You worked well, as the leader said, with your team and developed that as you moved up the system. And I say that fairness, that kindness, I think you've shown to people like me, who as I was on the dealing with you this morning, helping you, trying to help me understand aspects of the budget, making time, quick response. These are all characteristics that I know you passed on to your team, and I think all of us want to see replicated across the council. So all the best in Southwark. I could say that you are sort of moving to my employer, because that's where I work. Once upon a time, they used to pay the wages, but I think now we're academy. That's not quite the case. But if you could keep an eye on the education department in particular, they do sometimes cause us a few problems when it comes to issues like special needs and a few of the bits and bobs. But it's a very interesting place to be down on Tooley Street. It's not quite the same as walking down Hounslow. Better in some ways, worse in others, but it's a change. And I think to have a change is good. And I wish you all every success on behalf of our group, on behalf of all our group. Again, thank you for all you've done for us over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thampson. Any other announcements? Councillor Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got one announcement to make, if that's okay. Most of you here will know that the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, last week made an announcement to invest an historic £130 million in an emergency scheme to help families with the cost of living by providing every primary school children in London to receive free school meals for the academic year 23 to 24. This is a one-off payment, and this scheme will help around 270,000 children and families across London. So as you can imagine, this is fantastic news, and we absolutely welcome this, and we thank Sadiq Khan for this. This announcement, this scheme only shows how urgent it is that we really look at free school meals across the whole of England. Sadly, child hunger, it has become an epidemic today, and that surely cannot continue. So what I have done, along with many other local authorities and cabinet members is to write and sign an open letter to the Prime Minister to extend free school meals to every child in primary school across the whole country after this scheme is over. So I will let you know if I get a response from the Prime Minister. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bhatt. Before we move forward, just want to check, is there any declaration of interest regarding the 3 agendas for today's meeting? Councillor McGregor.
Yes, I'm the by-election agent for Heston West.
Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 3. Minutes of last meeting held on 31st of January 2023. Members will see the proposed amendments in supplementary agenda. May I ask members if they have any other corrections they may wish to propose? Agreed. Any matter arising? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 4, any petitions from the members? Councillor Luki.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have a petition of 98 signatures from residents of the White Gardens estate in Osley and Spring Grove ward, seeking support for the installation of barriers at the entrance of Stags Way and Brabourne Drive, because they're having to endure their roads being blocked up to twice daily by 2 major local schools for drop-offs and pickups of students and members of staff. The estate is also a victim of fly tipping, secreting of drugs and other antisocial behaviour. Current situation is critical and extremely worried about their health and safety. If you'll take that.
Thank you, Councillor Luki. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a petition signed by more than 50 people concerning the current overdraft budget we're being looked at tonight. And the comment they want to make is that hardworking families are being asked to foot the bill for Hounslow Labour's mismanagement of our public finances, whilst they use global events and national issues to detract from their inaction on tackling financial resource management and wasted money, and fail to increase any efficiency within the council. And they're passing on the cost of the negligence to residents across the borough through a
Mr.
rise.
McGregor, is that petition
Yep.
signed?
Yes, signed.
Okay. From which ward?
It's being presented to the council by Councillor Gerald McGregor, Homefields Ward, and Councillor Wanmashisa, Gunsbury Park Ward.
Okay, I'll take the petition.
Yeah, and it's a petition, yeah. So let me continue. We're therefore presenting.
This is not a speech, Councillor McGregor.
Sorry?
Just,
What, I beg your pardon?
it's not a speech.
No, I'm presenting the petition.
Okay, yes, I'm ready to take the
okay.
petition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're therefore presenting a petition supported by residents for freezing council tax. While the Labour Party argue that there is need to charge more, we on this side will continue to highlight that there is enough money in the council revenue to offset any change.
Mr. Mayor, this is a cheap political intervention by, this is not a petition. Can I move that this be struck, please?
Councillor Traub, we'll review this, officers, and then we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Now let's move to very important item, agenda item 5. We have now remind members that the law requires the council to hold a recorded vote on all the substantive decisions relating to the budget, or a council tax. Therefore, all votes in relation to the contents of this report and supplementary agenda will be recorded. However, just so we all clear, votes are purely on procedural matters will be taken in the usual way unless members specifically ask them to be recorded vote. I also intend to allow both leaders of to speak for 10 minutes in the main speech as the usual custom here in Hounslow. Do members agree by waiving standing orders to permit this? Thank you. Members will see a supplementary agenda containing a proposed amendment by the Conservative group. So everybody have, thank you. The way debate work will be the proposers and seconder of original report to speak first. We will move then to the proposed amendment and deal with that with a recorded vote at the end of the discussion. We will then finally debate the substantive item after this, taking into account whether it has been amended by the previous debate, and then vote on that. All votes will be recorded votes, and this is required by the law in the budget. Therefore, I invite Councillor Shantanu Rajwat to introduce the original report. You have 5 minutes unless you wish to take 10-minute speech now. Thank you, Councillor Rajwat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This will be my longer of the two speeches, if you would. This is a reference back from Cabinet to Council. Mr. Mayor, a year ago, I stood up in this chamber and presented a clear choice to the residents of this borough. The choice was around aspiration, innovation, and ambition from Labour, or more cuts, lack of ambition, and privatisation from the Tories. Today, having earned an overwhelming mandate for hope, I'm very proud to introduce the council budget for next year because it presents the best possible response to the colossal challenges that we are facing here in Hounslow. We're experiencing the highest inflation rate for 40 years, a cost of living crisis that is hurting everyone in our borough, and we're having to deal with a demand for our vital services that has never been greater. Fortunately, I can report that our finances are in a strong position, much better than many other boroughs, due to our sound financial management over the last years. But there are tough decisions that we as a council have to make to produce a budget that is both responsible and innovative and puts us on sound financial footing to deal with any future pressures and demands. In contrast to the chaos coming from the Conservative government, this Labour administration is providing the stable and reliable governance that residents and businesses of Hounslow need. Having made many visits across the borough, I hear and I feel our residents and businesses calling time on this incompetent Tory government. After 3 prime ministers, 4 chancellors, and 4 secretaries of state for levelling up housing and communities, and 13 years of inadequate funding from the government, the next few years were shaping up to be some of the most challenging in recent memory for our council. And then, to make matters worse, the disastrous Truss Kwarteng mini budget in September had a catastrophic impact on the economy, putting even more pressure on our residents' finances and on every council in the country, and we are included in that. These are the challenges, and let's be very clear about this. These are the challenges that the Conservative government insist upon imposing on us. There are councils across the country who have already called in the commissioners in the face of these challenges. But in Hounslow, we are proud of our resilience and our ability to manage money well. We recovered well from the COVID pandemic and have successfully dealt with the government's years and years and years of austerity. But, Council, it is important to be frank about the financial realities. Central government has yet again passed the buck back to local authorities because all of its calculations assume that councils like us will raise council tax by the maximum amount. It's also disturbing that the government has not committed to longer-term funding for councils, which means we cannot be certain about how much money we will have in the years ahead, making it extremely difficult to plan. This is especially true in high demand areas such as adults and children's social care and the net zero agenda. We, of course, have looked at all of the options to avoid a budget shortfall, and the extraordinary economic climate means that we have little choice but to propose to raise council tax in Hounslow to ensure a balanced budget. Therefore, it is proposed to raise council tax by 4.99%, the amount the government assumes local authorities will add to bills this year. This includes 2% ring-fenced for adult social care, which is critical investment to help meet the rising costs and demands for this service. This is a difficult decision, given the challenges we know our residents are currently facing, but it would be irresponsible not to make this decision now. Without increasing council tax, the council would have to consider cutting services, and we know that people are more dependent than ever on our help and support. Whilst our council tax remains well below the national average, I fully appreciate this is an added cost to residents at a time when household finances are already stretched. To address this, we are still offering one of the most generous council tax support schemes in London for eligible residents, including a further reduction of up to £50 and other hardship funds. But everybody should be aware that our ambitions for the transformation of our borough are not dimmed, and our commitment to the people of Hounslow has never been stronger. These are the people that re-elected us by such an overwhelming majority last May and put their trust in us to deliver the radical Labour Party manifesto, which has shaped our corporate plan. We're now delivering on our pledges in spite of the restrictions placed on us by central government. We are tackling the housing crisis by securing hundreds of high-quality, energy-efficient new homes. We're investing in extra police officers to make Hounslow safer, and we're also launching a new education project to challenge harmful attitudes to women to reduce gender-based violence in our borough. We're helping high streets to prosper, and we've launched a range of new initiatives to support local businesses, such as the Innovate and Grow programme. And we're also supporting our most vulnerable residents through our innovative community solutions approach. This is providing support to those in the greatest need through events like cost of living marketplace events and the network of warm spaces across the borough this winter. Mr. Mayor, despite having limited headroom, some might argue that budgets are all about choices. This budget affirms that this Labour administration is once again chosen the side of ambition for our residents, community groups and businesses, and I commend it to this Borough Council.
Councillor Dunn.
I'm seconding the motion and the report rather, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Now we move to amendment. Councillor Peter Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do enjoy coming to Hounslow once a year for the.
Sorry, Councillor Thompson, will you speaking for 10 minutes?
I think I probably will actually on this one.
Thank you.
Get it out of the way, then you can all not hear me again. No, I was saying, Mr. Mayor, I do like coming to Hounslow once a year with my family for the pantomime, and I feel as though I'm probably here again today, but I'm not going to add to that. I just want to very quickly go through the proposals to amend the budget. As you know, in opposition, your options are somewhat limited. Don't want to waste your time with a full package that might come in future years. But let's just use this, as most opposition groups do around the country, as a bit of a springboard to give us a chance to highlight some areas where we think the council should be doing a little bit more. Recently, I received a letter from a resident in Hounslow Heath ward. He sent it to myself and to the ward councillors and to a few council officers. And this is by way of explaining our first proposal to join the coalition of councils opposing the extension of the ultra-low emission zone. And this is what he wrote. My son and I both have asthma, so pollution directly affects us. However, even I can see that this approach is wrong. I rely on my diesel car for work and childcare, as do hundreds of people within your borough. It's our livelihood. It's how we feed our children in the cost of living crisis, and we don't see an end out of it. I'm not attached to my car in any way, and I sincerely wish that I could have a car that isn't diesel, but it's not that easy. I can't afford it. I can fairly afford the energy bills and food required to live. And to hear that you are supporting this shows how out of touch you are with the people in your borough. I'm not saying this to be inflammatory. It impacts on low incomes. I, like others, am not eligible for the scrappage scheme as it applies only to people on benefits. I'm not on benefits, but the cost of living has already purged my whole family into debt. And he says at the end of the letter, Hillingdon, Harrow, Bexley and Croydon have opposed the expansion. Why can't you join them too? Can your constituents finally be proud of those who are meant to be representing? Well, we have listened, and we are standing up with this proposal for our residents who have given us a very clear idea what they think about this plan. Moving on to our second proposal, to increase street lighting. When it was cut, all sorts of things were said in this chamber. I played them back, I had a look, I couldn't believe what I was hearing sometimes. But cutting street lighting, again, we've listened and we've spoken to people, makes residents feel more vulnerable at night. It's a simple fact, and we hear it time and time again. So we're going to take some money by deleting 5 posts that we have utterly no idea what they do or how they benefit the council, and a cabinet office support that we frankly don't think you need, and that would pay towards reversing that change, bearing in mind the massive increase, obviously, in electricity bills since that happened. We heard mention earlier, proposal 3 from Councillor Lukey, that fly tipping is a real problem in this authority, and littering. That environmental vandalism is ruining people's communities. It's not only an eyesore, but it's unacceptable nuisance to public health. It pollutes an area, it attracts vermin. We spend as a council millions dealing with this problem and litter picking off our streets. So anything we can do, and we're modelling it, we'll be honest with you, on a scheme that exists in Wandsworth, where residents can, free of charge, bring anything they want, from a sofa to a mattress to any other large items, to a mega skip that's placed around the borough, would be a great opportunity to dispose, for residents to dispose of their unwanted items for free. The money that would save, hopefully, in terms of reducing fly tipping and the cost of it, would perhaps allow those people out there who are tasked to do all the other street cleaning to perhaps get a move on and pick up the leaves that are still there from last autumn. The Community Biodiversity Fund, I won't waste time on that one, it speaks for itself. The next one is to increase the number of area forums to enhance local democracy. I've been staggered since I'm back on this council with what little regard area forums are considered. I think this is adding to the problem we all have in this chamber of disillusionment and apathy with regard to local democracy. People feel that their voice, their participation makes no difference. That leads to low voting figures. It leads to unrepresentative outcomes, and it's a failure to hold people like us to account. I feel that the answer is more participation and not less. So we have to find ways to empower people so that they can make a difference. I was staggered today to receive an email forwarded from my colleague about an area forum and how it all works these days, when officers have decided that this is what we will discuss in Chiswick. I've never heard the like. I'm not saying those items were not important, but they're not particularly local priorities. The day has now come when Big Brother in this civic centre, in this Hounslow House, decides what we discuss and what we do locally. In addition to that, whatever we do discuss is often hot air, because it doesn't seem to go anywhere. We need to find a way to enhance local democracy and give area forums some of that power they used to have back in the day, when they actually would make a real and tangible difference to people's lives. How are we going to fund these proposals? Well, you might think this is a bit of a trick, but actually, again, we've taken advice, we've looked around what other authorities were doing, and we think there is some logic in what we're proposing. we do consider, and this is a serious point, and obviously you may disagree, but do listen to what I'm saying to you, we do consider the council is adopting an overly pessimistic view of inflation. It obviously benefits the administration to play on the incompetence of central government and inflation, all the rest of it. And we know... Thank you. We're definitely back to the pantomime, aren't we? And what was I saying? Oh yeah, competence government, that's right. But obviously looking at the big picture, looking at the advice from the Bank of England, the OBR, the OECD and other economic forecasters, I think it's, without being sort of, Pollyanna and idealistic about it, I think it's a fair assumption to say that actually we are at the peak of the inflation and levels are going to go down. Again, I think it's a fair assumption to make that we could be down towards 2.5%, 3% by the end of this calendar year. And therefore, I think we could quite easily, without causing any insecurity and impact on the overall budget, to take the money we need, it's there in the report in front of you, from that amount that you put aside, 16 million for inflationary allocation. I think that would be a welcomed, as it would ease people's cost of living and it would increase their services and give people a little bit more financial security. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, in opposition, I'm after your sympathy here, but these budgets are, it's a no-win. I was saying to you outside, wasn't I? We can't win tonight. We know that. We're a few, you are many. Your budget will go forward. You'll make fun of our proposals and, be horrible to us. But we're fine. We've got thick skins. And I've spent the best part of 20 years being treated horribly in this chamber, so I'm fairly used to it. But the point is, maybe you could, serious point now, maybe you could take some of these items away and have a ponder. Okay, we do have some good ideas on this side, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if in 6 months, maybe a year's time, some of these proposals came back and maybe come back as policy that we could all adopt, and they would genuinely, I think, move us forward. So I'll pause there. Thank you for listening. I would welcome discussion on the proposals. I will come back and say a few little words when we go back to the substantive motion in a few minutes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Do you have a seconder, Councillor McGregor?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I'm prepared to second the motion on the amendment to the budget. And I'd like to concentrate on the new Community Biodiversity Fund, which is a hugely important issue. What we propose to do under item 4 of our amendment is to ensure that every councillor has an opportunity to use £1,000 for green projects in the borough. There are other issues within this area, like waste management, where we are seriously negligent, because those of you who have been to our Southall waste management site will know that the accommodation there is in temporary housing, and we need to do something about that. So the long-term capital program for waste management is something which we're very keen on, and we'll come back to you with more details when we've actually got the foundation going. Suffice to say, in terms of biodiversity and the environment, we've got a lot to do, and we've got the issue of bulky waste disposal, and that's a program that should deserve a lot of thought, and we've costed out in a very appropriate way at a minimum, and that's the minimum value here. We'd like to do more, but we need to actually put it to you that you're doing less than you should in both those areas. The Biodiversity Fund could be used for building green walls around schools and green walls along very important highways, such as the A4, the A315, the A316, where we can actually try and protect people from the effects of pollution and traffic standing still, which is now a feature, of course, of Hounslow traffic management policy as it currently stands. Item 5 is hugely important because if we are true to democracy, we want to see decision-making taken down to the lowest possible level. The American people, of course, have this wonderful thing about talking about for the people, by the people, and with the people, or whatever it is they say specifically. I forget now, but you know what I'm getting at. And that is to bring people into the forum so they can understand what's going on about how we actually govern and how we actually make decisions here in Hounslow. So increasing the number of area forums really will enhance local democracy. Now, the costing there is very straightforward. Each meeting apparently increases the cost of the council by about £5,000. So that £5,000 is multiplied out here in our commitment to £50,000. So we'd have 10 more meetings a year, which is 2 for every area forum. Now, one of the key things about having area forum is that sometimes we're surprised by the number of people who turn up. Sometimes we're not surprised because no one turns up. That's a tragedy. And the reason why we consider that is because if you are going to hold area forums, you want to make sure that people are able to attend and understand what's going on. And one of the key things there is, guess what? When people turn up, there aren't enough agendas for them. It's a classic. Now, of course, we've got used to the fact that very often that items are attended by fewer than 15, 20 people. So what's the point of actually procuring 200 or a ream of paper to go into agendas? But it is fascinating that when people turn up and there's no agenda they can follow, they wonder what the hell's going on. We need to sort that out. Similarly, we need to come back to look at the question of democracy and look at the question also of having good advice. Previously in area forums, we'd have a council legal officer with us, because in those days, of course, area forums were the primary source of planning and monitoring for the council, taking a great deal of work off the planning committee, for example, and taking a great deal of work off scrutiny and the other senior committees of the council. So there's a lot of win-win here if we actually give more value, more decision-making, more capacity back to the area fora. The other issue here that we need to be aware of is that when we talk about what we're doing here, funding the proposals is relatively easy. When we come to the main debate, I'll be showing you how, in fact, we can fund things even better across the board, not just amongst this amendment. So watch this space for the main event. So when we look at funding the proposals, what do we see? Well,
Councillor McGregor, 1 minute. Can you
thank you very
conclude,
much.
please?
We're going to change some capacities because we don't believe in the cabinet portfolio assistant, and we believe that a cabinet office support is unnecessary when we've got existing provision. I'd like to make another point here. This evening we've got another officer decision, and it's covering a request to pull out a lot of money from a reserve, and this includes, guess what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seven new posts, average salary about 42,000. Yeah, that's a lot of money. And I'm wondering why, because it says we're trying to deal with a backlog. Well, wait a minute. If we were properly organized, the backlog wouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist if you're properly organized. And the answer is you're not properly organized. There's a lot of inefficiency and it's led to an overdraft budget. Mr. Mayor, I second the amendment on behalf of the Conservative group and supporting my leader, Councillor Peter Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Rajwat, will you accept the amendments?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Can we debate the amendments then? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Catherine Dunn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of their amendment, the Tories are asking us to throw away £315,000 on a performative legal action against a policy designed to improve the health of our residents.
Yeah.
We will not be doing that.
No.
Let us be clear. The council is not responsible for the ultra-low emission zone or its expansion, but we support it, and we always have done. We said in our response to the previous expansion consultation in 2019 that we would like to see greater expansion over time so that the whole of Greater London can benefit from cleaner air. In the 6 months following that expansion into Chiswick in 2021, we saw a 9% reduction in nitrogen dioxide levels compared with the previous 6-month period. This is important because long-term exposure to air pollution has been associated with cardiovascular disease and with lung cancer, and may also be associated with type 2 diabetes and dementia. Poor air quality disproportionately impacts children, the elderly, those who are pregnant, people with pre-existing health conditions, and those living in the most deprived areas. The Office for Health Improvement and Disparities attributed 6.8% of deaths in Hounslow in 2020 to particulate air pollution, PM2.5. And this is why urgent action is required. We cannot say, as our Tory colleagues do, that the people of Hounslow are not deserving of clean air.
Will you take an intervention, Councillor?
We are aware that people have concerns. No, thank you. We are aware that people have concerns about the expansion of the ULEZ, and we share those concerns. And that is why I set out in our most recent consultation response a number of measures we would like to see to help our residents adjust. We have asked for improvements to public transport services in the borough and welcome the announcement that bus services will be expanding in Outer London. We're working with Transport for London on improvements to bus routes to ensure greater speed and reliability, and we continue to push for greater accessibility for rail stations. This morning, I was at Islewood Station with Network Rail, South Western Railways. Councillor Bowring was there, Councillor Lukey was there. We were looking at the improvements we're going to see this year to make that step-free access. But we understand that some people have to drive. We understand that some people will require longer to change their vehicle or their mode of transport, and we welcome the grace periods for disabled people and for organisations that are providing community transport. We welcome the £110 million that the Mayor of London is putting into a scrappage scheme, the biggest ever, to help individuals and businesses to change their vehicles. But we believe that the government should be helping Londoners to do this, like it has helped other cities where clean air zones have been introduced. Scrapping ULEZ or scrapping the expansion will not solve the cost of living crisis. Let's not forget that the Tories caused the cost of living crisis. They caused it through austerity, and they caused it with their mismanagement of the economy. It would be an easy answer to say that the people of Hounslow don't deserve clean air, but we, the Labour Party, believe that they do. Fighting the ULEZ expansion is the wrong answer. We need to make ULEZ work for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Councillor Shaheen. Councillor Shaheen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to our Conservative colleagues across the aisle there for submitting this amendment. I mean, I have to say, though, Mr. Mayor, it is astounding. This is probably the shortest alternative budget I've ever seen, and yet it manages to contradict itself. We've just heard Councillor Dunn ably rebut your points on the ULEZ. You are standing in the way of a key environmental initiative, whilst further down you claim to be touting environmental initiatives on the Community Biodiversity Fund. I don't want to let that take away from the fact you have raised an important point with the Community Diversity Fund. I'm not going to be mean to you for the sake of being mean to you. It's a nice idea. I would say, however, why are you being so conservative? You're proposing a £62,000 grant for community groups on biodiversity environmental projects. Well, actually, thanks to our carbon offsets, we've already made £250,000 available specifically for community groups on environmental projects, and we've got another £150,000 available for those community groups and environmental projects in the next financial year. That doesn't even count the many other initiatives that we've got. We've got Thriving Communities Funds grants going to environmental initiatives. We are working with the Friends groups, our Friends of Parks groups, on all manner of environmental initiatives, including biodiversity initiatives. In my own ward alone, we can count Northcote Nature Reserve, and it's a fantastic piece of work. You really should go down and see what's happening there. That wonderful project to turn a disused piece of grass into a beautiful nature reserve for our people. let's not forget, of course, the green and blue infrastructure strategy, which we're widely consulted on in the community to build a borough that is 45% green, and of course our Grow for the Future project that we are bringing forward, which will involve significant investment into turning 27 acres of public land into wildlife havens, into orchards, into community gardens, into allotments where people in a cost of living crisis can grow food amongst nature. So I think we actually are very robust on that, but I do welcome your green ideas, your green interventions on that, your passion in this area. I will not fault that, and I welcome further conversations in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Shaheen. Councillor Mishisho.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's finally great to be able to speak and not to be cancelled by the chief. I'm not sure what his name is, but his position is. But anyway, I'm glad I'm here to speak. Chief Whip, Captain Mannering himself. All right. Now, Captain Mannering.
Can you we all be polite to each other?
No, it is not. I support the services. Thank you very much, Captain Mannering. Now, to speak about this. Now, the point that our leader, Councillor Thompson, raised were 5 key points. I want to actually focus on one, and that's the increase in enhancing our local democracy and increase in our area forums. We have seen in just this first year of this administration, the first area forum was cancelled in February just gone. We were supposed to be following up that meeting from the previous well-attended area forum, which was probably the most well-attended, the most contributory, the most amount of stations on display, and all those good things that happened there that actually put Chiswick on the map and put Hounslow on the map in terms of local democracy. They cancelled it. They cancelled it, Mr. Mayor. And the issues were so prevalent at the time as well, and those issues still stand. Those issues were traffic and transport, low traffic neighborhood, and now it would have been the issues of council tax, which, as we've just heard, is going to be going up by its most maximum amount possible. Mr. Mayor, even officers in this council are not aware of area forums because of this administration. So this afternoon, I received an email from an officer of this council who was not even aware that area forums take place. So I take Councillor Thompson's point to heart, because it's the way in which we are advertising our democracy and how we're not taking power down to the people, and that's reflected in the officers that we employ in this council who are not even aware about local democracy at everyone's doorstep. So this particular budget today, I know Councillor Wajawat said that he visits the borough often and he speaks to a number of people, but he actually refused, when it comes to local democracy, to come to our area forum, which was due to take place in March. So how does that function as local democracy if you are running away from basic scrutiny from the area forums? Now, he also mentioned that Liz Truss produced that mini budget in April, in winter last year, and she actually did the honorable thing when she realized her mistake. She resigned. Councillor Rajawat, if he was honorable, he would know that this budget, this overdraft budget, is not fit for this council, and he should be thinking about his position as leader of the council. So we're moving on. He also met the Queen this week, I understand. The Queen. She met the Queen. He met the Queen this week. He met the Queen this week.
Councillor Mishisho, 1 minute. Please conclude.
He met the Queen this week, and I wonder whether he extolled to her, talked to her about his One Hounslow project, perhaps the 89 projects, the vanity projects that he's running right now, which are costing us massive amount of money, and we've got alternative budget for that to help you bring. Yes, we do. It's an amendment to your budget. It's an amendment to your budget. So
Councillor
she's going
Mishisho,
from.
can
She's
we
going
conclude?
from. He's going.
Councillor, calm down, everyone. Be nice to everyone. Councillor Mishisho.
Okay, you give me some time, sir, because. Thank you. He met the Queen.
Councillor Shaheen.
Councillor Rajawat met the Queen this week. And I wonder whether the Queen heard about your One Hounslow project. Was one pleased? Very pleased? I wonder. You look around the room today, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, you can see that they're all in red. Well, that just reflects the overdraft budget because they are in red. They are in red indeed. And this council deserves a much, much better administration. And I think that they should consider our amendment to the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Mishisho. Councillor Emsley, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I missed the memo for the red. I went for yellow instead. It was a bit of a compromise. Yes, in the middle, isn't it? It's in the middle. I got the wrong one. I got the wrong one. I'm very proud to support these amendments on the budget this evening, which I think will help support residents across our borough. As Councillor Thompson said, a lot of what we're proposing in these amendments, I don't think is actually that controversial. Councillor Shaheen made some very good points about the biodiversity fund, and I think that we should work together on making sure that we're funding those green groups together. Obviously, Councillor Mishiso made some very good points about the additional funding for area forums so that Hounslow can truly become its listening council. But in addition to all of those, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to focus on the letter that Councillor Dunn mentioned earlier in her speech, because in that letter, this council, I think, rightly recognised some of the dangers that the ULEZ expansion poses to this borough, this economy, and the pressures that it will place on working families, small businesses, and the council's own budget. That letter stated that up to 42% of drivers in our borough could be hit by ULEZ fines. It stated that because of ULEZ, those on low incomes may be forced to reduce the number of trips they make, affecting their ability to find or to go to work. That letter acknowledged that there is a very real risk that some of the most important businesses to our economy would relocate outside of Hounslow because of ULEZ. And in Councillor Dunn's own words, that would further damage our local economy that is already slowly progressing, slowly coming out of and recovering from the pandemic. The fact is that Councillor Dunn's letter suggests that Hounslow Council is so worried about the budgetary pressures it will face due to its own non-compliant vehicles, this council has asked Sadiq Khan for an exemption for its own fleet.
Oh, really?
Let's be clear, Mr. Mayor, pantomime aside, this council cannot ask for an exemption for its own vehicles whilst backing the expansion of ULEZ for the rest of the borough.
Hypocrisy.
It cannot be one rule for Hounslow Council and another rule for the rest of us.
Hypocrisy.
Mr. Mayor, the budget debate is all about how this council proposes to spend money in order to deliver for residents. Given the stark warnings made by Councillor Dunn about the impact ULEZ expansion will have on our borough, on the poorest families, on the small businesses in our local communities, there is perhaps no better way to deliver for residents than by opposing Sadiq Khan's ULEZ plan.
Yeah.
Residents are watching. Councillors are faced with, in my mind, a very easy decision, but it is a binary decision. Either they support the council's current position which is one rule for Hounslow Council and another rule for the rest of us. Or they back this amendment, they fund a legal challenge on the ULEZ expansion, and they show that they're willing to put our borough's interests before Sadiq Khan's interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Emsley. Councillor Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a point of information, really. To the amendment item number 3, introduction of free bulky waste disposal days. We on the cabinet portfolio for housing, as you know, and just as a point of information, we have already started to pull together an action plan to pilot throughout the estates that are really problematic with fly tipping, and we will be having these bulky days. So for the residents to use like skips or whatever we decide to do, but we have already we've already got that underway from the end of last year. But I'm really pleased to see that the Tory administration have supported our initiative in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Councillor Shivraj Garewal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just read your amendment, Mr. Thompson, but I totally disagree with it. And I don't like the idea that you are trying to preach us how to run our finances when you can't run your own. And I don't think so. You guys go and attend marketplaces and you don't know what exactly we are providing the residents of a borough. As part of a radical overhaul and consultation and engagement, we started a new approach to area forums in 2022, which increased attendance significantly and created events which reflected the place they represent through market stalls, events in advance of the formal meetings. In addition to area forums, ward councillors now have the opportunity to host community ward walks in their wards twice a year, which explores issues out and about as well. I can tell you one thing, that one of your councillors, I don't want to name him, he refused to go for a ward walk, and I can produce that email. Yes, he said he doesn't have the time. Okay, which often leads to an agenda items at formal meetings, potentially a specific event on particular topics relevant to that area. What I would like to say and end at that, we are building on progress made so far. We will, of course, continue to develop an approach to area forums to ensure all parts of a community are reached and we engage with them, and we will be monitoring our area forums and we will be developing them in such a way that it suits every resident of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garewal. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of, I want to talk about a couple of the suggestions in the alternative manifesto. Councillor Emsley thinks it's not very controversial. I suppose Mrs. Truss thought the same about her budget. So I want to talk about dimming lights. Dimming lights has not made residents unsafe. I had a look back because I thought it was a couple of years that we made the changes. In fact, it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago it was made, and in that time, I can remember 2 times when people have said, "I'm worried about the lights." One was by Councillor Gill about Chiswick Back Common, where we changed the lights and put more light on. I've got one running at the moment, which is in Hounslow somewhere, where they're saying the same thing. We're looking at it. In this time, it's a time where the cost of electricity is going up madly. It's a time of climate change. It's a time when we need to be very careful about wasting energy. And we want to be even more careful about wasting money that belongs in the end to our council taxpayers. This is no time to add energy really on a whim. It's really on a whim. It doesn't make anybody unsafe. The police don't think it makes people safe. I don't think it makes people safe. Nobody complains about it being safe. One or two people do, and we deal with it.
Will you take an intervention, Councillor Gilbert? It's me, John Todd. Will you take an intervention?
No.
He doesn't need a seconder. Will you take an intervention? He didn't. His mouth hasn't moved yet.
He said no.
I wanted to go on and talk about what you call the labour rubbish problem. It's not a labour rubbish problem. We have in the country we have a problem with fly tipping, and we have it in Hounslow. And we made a pledge a year ago. We said we will reduce it by 25% over the time of this administration. What have we done in the first period of less than a year? We refused it by 23%. A year ago, the leader announced a new approach to how we keep the streets clean. We're working on that, and it will be coming off shortly. Part of that was involved some free bulky waste collection, and we'll do that when the time comes, and we'll do it in a way which is sustainable and is part of a properly put together strategy for reducing waste and reducing fly tipping, which we've proven we're good at doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like most budget meetings, I wasn't planning on speaking this evening, but I feel like I have to because I've been listening to, I've actually been listening to what's been told today, and I have to wonder, like, how much is this council actually listening? Simple things like you keep on calling our amendment an alternative. Well, it's not an alternative budget. And so whether it's just a political ploy or not, that's fine. But, you know, it doesn't prove that you're listening, which you've been saying you have been for the last year. To go on to the streetlights, I think this is really quite interesting because actually to claim that better streetlights don't make people feel safe would be wrong. And we'd have the data to reinforce that. We've asked for this multiple times in this chamber following the awful incident in Clapham. We've been doing it repeatedly. We have the maps. The Met Police set up the Safer Street initiatives because they wanted to highlight areas or allow people in the public to highlight areas where they didn't feel safe due to poor lighting. So to say that the police doesn't care about this or has said that they don't think that better street lighting impacts people's perception of an area to be safe is extremely misleading and wrong. The lights on Chiswick Back Common, well, you know, there've been lights there that have been out for months that people don't feel safe about walking down the street. We've been asking for increased lighting on specific areas for years and nothing has come out of it. And so I find it very, very interesting that even at our police meetings, what was one of the first questions they asked, Joe? Sorry, I'm going to have to... Do you want to intervene and you can make that point? Sorry.
Yes, thank you. At the first meeting that we held with the police in Chiswick on crime and policing, our area assistant borough commander, tri-borough commander, made the point that he had walked around Chiswick Back Common and noticed... noticed that the
So you're
lights were
intervening.
low. Yes, sorry.
Okay,
Yes, I
thank
am,
you.
sorry. Do you want me to start again? Yes. It might be that you've forgotten, so I'm going to ask you at the end if you remember. When we held our first police and meeting on policing and crime in Chiswick, the Tri-Borough commander came to it and said he'd walked around the back common before coming to the meeting and noticed that the lights were low, and he felt that one of the first things that should be done is that lighting should be raised. So the police know that is important. And then you, but it is...
But not to the full limits that they were in 2018.
Rocks Lane's lights were put up. That's a different thing. That's not public lighting. Elsewhere, dimming and trimming has been retained, and you can't
Councillor
deny
Biddulph,
that.
you made a
Older
point.
people in
Mr.
particular
Mayor, is there a
will
question
not
anywhere
go
in the
out.
audience?
So if
Are
I
you
could, Joe,
aware?
thank you. I'll
Councillor
give you-
Biddulph.
Yeah.
Councillor
So,
Biddulph, you made a point.
thank you very much, Joe, for that intervention. And well, seeing as we're making up the rules, so well, seeing as it's one case for one person and another case for another, should we say? So, and then I welcome the fact that Sue has picked up on this. Sue has already said, or Councillor Sampson, oh my gosh, Councillor Sampson has said that you're already going to be bringing in a bulky waste system on council estates. I think what we would like as part of this is actually to extend that so it's not just those who live on council estates, but it benefits all residents in the borough, considering that a huge amount of the fly tipping does happen at the end of cul-de-sacs and other private roads of that aren't council assets, should we say. And I think that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Rajwat.
I'm not sure what I've just sat through there. I mean, I'm glad, Councillor Thompson, you talked about pantomimes, because this is the only pantomime in town at the moment, I'm afraid. Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, yes, he did. Obviously, we won't be supporting this because, as is the way, you believed so much in this, and it's so important to you, Councillor Mashisha, you smile at me. It's so important to you that you released it on the day of the meeting. You didn't even give us sight of it in advance. You've had our budget for over a week, and you've been able to respond to it. You believe in it. It's so important to you that you couldn't even agree it before today. Shameful, shameful. But let's look at what it contains. Let's look at what it contains. I mean, I completely agree with comments that have been made by my colleagues on the Labour side, you know, taking a bit of what we're already doing, knowing that we're already doing it, taking my commitments when I became leader and trying to make it into your own words. People see through it. They're not stupid. I'm sorry, they're not. Don't treat them like they're stupid. We treat them like proper individuals. But there's a bigger point here. There's a bigger point that this amendment doesn't address. And I'm going to try and be constructive. It's not about beating up Councillor Thompson, but Councillor Thompson, as leader of the opposition, your government talk big and you talk big about supporting residents, and yet you do nothing in your amendments and alternatives to address the fundamental problem in our society. People are struggling to heat their homes or eat. You have nothing in this to address that. This is nothing more than a few vanity projects and a little bit of shroud waving and a little bit of nice press PR that I'm sure Councillor Emsley will get up on Twitter afterwards, that actually mean nothing. If you were serious about the residents, and this is a serious point, this is nothing, we've had our fun now. If you were serious about the residents, you would put up an alternative that addressed the cost of living crisis. You would look at constructively some of the work we're doing around communities that I'll address later. You've done nothing. This amendment is tone deaf and is wrong, and it will not be supported.
Thank you, Councillor Rajwat. So shall we put on to vote for the amendment? So I remind it will be a recorded vote, and I will pass it on to Clive for that. Thank you, Clive.
Good evening, members. Members are reminded they're voting for the amendment, against the amendment, or abstaining. Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Akram.
Against.
Councillor Vassim.
Against.
Councillor Atwell here. Councillor Bath. Councillor Batty.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Bidoff.
For.
Councillor Bowing.
Against.
Councillor Bruce. Councillor Butt.
Against.
Councillor Samia Chowdhury.
Against.
Councillor Unsa Chowdhury.
Against.
Councillor Chopra.
Against.
Councillor Croft.
Against.
Councillor Dunn.
Against.
Councillor Emsley.
For.
Councillor Farmahan.
Against.
Councillor Foote.
Against.
Councillor Giles.
For.
Oh, sorry, that was a bit close.
Councillor Ajimagul.
Against.
Councillor Pritam Gul.
Against.
Councillor Shivraj Gul.
Against.
Councillor Vikram Gul. Councillor Gull.
Against.
Councillor Joseph.
For.
Councillor Kaleem.
Against.
Councillor Cameron.
Against.
Councillor Kiani.
Against.
Councillor Lal. Councillor Lambert.
Against.
Councillor Lukey.
Against.
Councillor Malik. Councillor Mann. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Mia.
Against.
Councillor Hina Mia, sorry.
Against very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Against.
Councillor Mashisho.
For.
Councillor Nagra.
Against.
Councillor Parisotto.
Against.
Councillor Rajawat.
Against.
Councillor Raza.
Against.
Councillor Raymond.
Against.
Councillor Sampson.
Against.
Councillor Sarai. Councillor Shaheen.
Against.
Councillor Marina Sharma.
Against.
Councillor Jagdish Sharma.
Against.
Councillor Sidhu. Councillor Siddiqui.
Against.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Stroud-Turp.
Against.
Councillor Tack.
For.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Todd.
For.
Councillor Umair.
Against.
And Councillor Williams.
Against.
So the amendment is therefore defeated.
Thank you, Clive. Now, let's move on to substantive report. Again, may I remind members can speak only once. Members who have already spoken can again speak. So I will ask Councillor Rajwat to move the report. Sorry, debate the report. Yes. Yeah.
Formally move it once again. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rajwat. So let's debate the report. Councillor Prezota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm proud to vote in favor of this budget today because I value what we have and will continue delivering for our residents. These are tough times, and we were elected to make tough decisions. But none of us could have expected the scale of the problem created by the Conservative government left for us to deal with. Nonetheless, we have made promises to our residents for an ambitious Hounslow. To deliver that, we must replace the funding that has gone through an increase in council tax, the only power left to us by the government. One of our key promises was for a cleaner Hounslow, and we know how much this means to our residents. Colleagues like me will undoubtedly have a folder in their inbox titled Fly Tipping and will have Fix My Street as their most used app. This is about pride in place. And I know a thing or two about keeping things clean. I worked as a cleaner for 3 years and know the hard work that it takes to maintain places and environments. So I was excited to join officers on a mission to tackle a fly tipping hotspot in Brentford. And I was delighted by the diligence shown by our officers in investigating the waste so that those responsible for creating that mess in our communities could be held accountable. And we've shown the results of this today. We also educated the residents through conversations and leaflets. And we also went further, thinking about how we can tackle that long term through grit bins and planters, which are being extended across Hounslow. And I'm also grateful to local resident groups such as Air Quality Brentford and others who are working for a cleaner and greener Hounslow, often with support of our council. And that's not a one-off scenario, it's a strategy that works. From April to December 2022, there were just over 14,000 fly tipping incidents reported to Hounslow highways, a decrease of 23% compared to the year before. And we will continue working towards our 50% recycling rate and our pavement pledge, so residents get a say in their local area. For that and more, we need this budget. We're also planting 20,000 trees, investing in parks and allotments, delivering 2,000 electric vehicle charging points, and creating spaces where people can walk and cycle. Conservatives, on the other hand, are dumping sewage on our rivers and refusing to tackle our air pollution. Colleagues, I welcome and commend this budget, delivering ambitions now and for the future of Hounslow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Unsa Chaudhary.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to speak on the budget. Firstly, I'd like to invite our Chiswick Area Forum attendees to perhaps attend Isworth and Brentford Area Forum if they would like to see what a true listening area forum is actually like. So, whilst those on the opposition may blame global matters, the administration, in their already tied attacks, they forget 49 days that their party, voted for and inflicted upon us, the nation. Many of us will not forget this. Let us explore the challenges that 13 years of Tory austerity has inflicted upon our residents and how we as a council are working really hard to try and address them, particularly in the area of community safety. Over 20,000 fewer police officers, Boris's famous police station closures programme. Since 2015, charge rates for the most common crimes have fallen from 17% to 6%. Stalking, which primarily affects women and girls, it's down from 35% to what? 5%. You heard me, 5%, effectively decriminalising it. This is Tory Britain in 2023. Despite all this, in Hounslow, we have a plan, and it's working. An example of this is the new area-based Safer Communities operational team working in our neighbourhoods, yeah, we're listening, closely with our residents, our businesses and our members. Recently, I joined a visit in conjunction with our police teams, fellow councillors, Ruth Cadbury MP. And what do? We listened to residents. We heard about their views and we heard about the excellent work that's happening in our area. Our violence against women and girls plan, that's working. When we say no more, we can truly mean it. Our leader, he's our champion. That shows how important we take it when it comes to the white ribbon. Mr. Mashisha, you're laughing at this. It's embarrassing for you to do that.
Nothing unusual.
Domestic violence and sexual teams have So alongside this, the domestic violence sexual team has featured in the Home Office's strategy guidance, showcasing our staff's excellent work. And that's through this challenging climate. We've piloted the borough's first public health preventative project focused on reducing violence in the borough, and that's something we can be proud of. In times when inflation is over 10%, I do believe we need to think long and hard. We need to think about the decisions we make as a council. Councillor Giles, you said you're a listening person, but right now you're talking to the councillor next to you, so please give me the respect. So, as I was saying, I'm the chair of audit and governance, and yes, we do work cross-party and we are working on the value of money. And as a council, we have a simple challenge. Do we salami slice the vital services that our residents need and rely on? Or do we have to do something which we don't want to do, but raise the council tax to help support those vital services? I know why I would fall on that. So I support the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Chaudhary. Councillor Thompson.
Okay. I think I've been accused. What we've been accused of tonight, we're polluting the rivers. We're probably responsible for climate change and the world's global recession and whatever else I've done. So I do apologise. I apologise. Right. So I'm a very bad person. This council tax increase, actually, to make a serious point, you recognise yourself, leader, is not coming at a great time for any of us. We know there are tremendous pressures on our residents. You did talk about us not perhaps dealing with that, but I think as the government, let's face it, most of our funding does come from government. And I think the record of government in terms of helping residents out, in terms of energy fuels, help with the council tax last year, the biggest increase in our funding since 2010. I understand why you're not mentioning any of that. It's in the report, but I understand why you don't mention it. There always isn't there a bigger picture. But we know you're under pressure, okay? But we always, as Conservatives, hesitate to go to that default position of increasing the council tax. I just want to very quickly talk about three things that impact on what our residents were paying after our decisions tonight. And they sort of come under the titles of CARN, charges, and consultation. I sort of mentioned this before when we had a motion at last Borough Council about the cost of living crisis, and that was a more sensible, I think, debate that we had there. But we do know that within this package, within the money that residents have to fork out, there is that 9.7% increase to the mayor. And again, it frustrates me, I'm sure it frustrates you, to be honest with you, that whilst we have to say within budget, obviously the mayor seems for some reason to have a pass and he's exempt. And let's not forget that it's disappointing that when we are paying for his incompetence. Let's not forget that we are living in a city and he runs the police force and the fire brigade that's under special measures. He runs a transport system that is constantly being bailed out by central government. His expansion of the air zone, and don't get me wrong, Councillor Moore, we discussed earlier, no one is saying that we expect or demand or think it's acceptable for air quality to be poor for anybody in this borough. There's another debate to be had. We honestly don't think that this will make a slightest bit of difference to air quality in the outer zone. We really don't think it will make a difference. And the way he's doing it also obviously is highly unsuccessful. We also know, again, we're marvellous that we in Hounslow are building more houses, but his percentage of housing has fallen by 22%. And in particular in London, under the mayor, crime is on the increase, whereas in the rest of the country, the figures are going down. So I think he just have an argument to answer. And I think we need to perhaps take that informally, perhaps through London councils, whatever mechanisms the Labour Party has, to make sure that he doesn't keep on fleecing us because he can't get his act together. In terms of fees and charges within the report, that's always obviously a difficult one, that sometimes doesn't get much of a discussion. But I'll make this very simple point. We have bailed out Lambton Leisure to a ridiculous amount of money over the last 12 months. £8+ million to stop them going under. I'll just put it to you that perhaps raising all the charges by 10% might not be the most sensible approach. That's more of a question and an observation and a comment. The organisation is under great pressure. That's been accepted in cabinet papers, is mentioned within this report here. But we do need to think about whether increasing charges is actually going to get more people into the pools and into the gyms and into the squash courts and all the rest of it. Because it does seem, apart from all the other things, that's one of the biggest drivers for the massive losses that they are making. And finally, consultation. We talk about being a council who listens, and people do expect to be listened to and informed and consulted on how their money is going to be spent. And I sort of partly understand the pressures that were on the administration this
Councillor
time.
Thompson, last 1 minute.
Okay, in terms of the relatively late final settlement and so on. But there has been next to no consultation this year, obviously none with the area forums. In the report, there's a wonderful reference to an online consultation that happened in February. Now, I've looked and looked at our council website. I don't think that happened. I think, like, my machine's fallen to pieces. I think it's 22.6. Online consultation will happen in February. I don't think it did. So I think you might have to fess up to that one. And if it did, I can't see it. But please do. Send me the link. Send me the link. Okay. So again, residents are going to be hit triply over after this budget. The triple Labour whammy of increased council tax, a hike to their portion paid to the mayor, and for many of residents, that £12.50 a day, which is the wrong solution, which will have next to no impact on air quality, and will, as Councillor Amesley and others have said, cause significant damage and harm to our residents.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Junimia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm immensely proud and honored to speak before you all. In a thriving Hounslow, we have outstanding educational facilities with a high success rate. Many of our children progress to higher education with great results. My son studied at Hitland School. He went to Oxford University and studied at Balliol College, where 4 of our former Prime Minister also have studied. He is a clear testimony to our educational excellence. With such a cultural diversity in Hounslow, we have a flourishing community and many businesses with plenty of job opportunities and career paths. We plan to grow even further in the future. One of our greatest achievements as a Labour Council was our work in the pandemic. Our support for young people and the work undertaken across the political spectrum to ensure that as many as possible were able to access to our digital devices received positive feedback. Our support for local business, including the £20 voucher scheme, secured national recognition. Despite the economic challenges, none of which are of our making, we will continue to support young people in education to achieve their dreams. We'll continue to support local businesses, enterprise, ensuring as far as possible that the Hounslow pound stays in Hounslow. We'll work with our partners to ensure that our borough continues to thrive whilst we wait for a Labour government. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you, Councillor Junimia. Councillor McGregor.
First of all, may I pay tribute to the previous speaker? I enjoyed listening to what he had to say, and I'm delighted that his son got into Balliol. It's a wonderful place to go. And I forget which college Neri went to, but I'm certainly thinking it was Balliol. We'll find out later. I'll talk to you. So
Thank you, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you very much indeed for that. A very interesting approach. Well pleased with that. Mr. Mayor, going back to the budget, the issues of the budget are overwhelmingly those of understanding how you function and manage the balance sheet of the council. And of course, we only get a balance sheet when we see the statutory accounts in May. This is an operating statement. The operating statement gives us a figure for employees' remuneration of 115,952,829, which is pretty well close to the council tax demand we make. So effectively, the council tax pays for our staff, if you want to homologate it in that particular way. Now, the point about that 115 million is it doesn't take account of churn rate. So directors, when they get the varmint, get their chunk of that 115 million. But if someone leaves the council's employ, or someone goes on maternity or paternity leave, then of course the salary changes, the commitment changes, and there's a credit balance. And the 150 million takes no account of the churn rate. In previous budgets, which I organised, the churn rate was a key element to our cost-saving capacity. Churn rate means people coming and going, perhaps people retiring, perhaps people unfortunately dying in service. That's the churn rate. So that would actually yield at 4%. The standard national churn is a little bit higher, but I'm not going to be picky about it. And that would give 464 million back to the taxpayer. 464 million. Okay, 4,640,000. The capital, that's on page 74 of the budget if you're interested in. Page 169 of the budget, the capital program. The capital program is suffering from an overbalance of 50 million being brought forward, unspent from previous years. We're putting 20.5 million from the general fund into capital programs. Unnecessary. Take 10% off that because it won't get spent anyway. In the current financial year, we're approaching, I beg your pardon, in the financial year after this one. So take 10% off that. That would give the taxpayer back 2,050,000. Oh, and by the way, this is an alternative budget because it comes back straight to the numbers you're talking about. What about looking at the question of the capital program itself? So far, 6690. Then we look at the procurement program. Now, Councillor Dunn announced very kindly that Hounslow will need to replace 70 vehicles. And we want to spend 315,000 on trying to limit ULEZ from affecting Hounslow. 315,000. The cost of those new vehicles in the procurement contract on page 234 is 130,000,000, 13 million pounds. That's twice the increase of the council tax. And you're willing to put that into the mix and pretend it doesn't matter. It does matter. You're putting charges on people they don't deserve to bear. There's another issue about efficiency and contact within the organization. If you look at page 39, the inflationary adjustments include another 169,000 for the external audit fee. Now, I wonder why. I've got a fairly good idea. Systems audits are normally carried out in the autumn. Final audits carried out.
Councillor McGregor, last 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This will be over very shortly. 169,000. I'm boring you all with numbers, I know that, but the numbers actually make it work. 169,000 increase in audit fees. If the systems audit didn't work, then they'll no doubt want bigger fees to complete the audit because they'll be spending extra time and effort on it because there are functionalities within Hounds that aren't working. The audit report fee, external, on page 39, is going up by 150%. Where's the control? And the audit fee going up indicates there is no control. And I leave you with that thought, because quite simply, this is an overdraft budget. You're living on credit. You're not managing the balances. You're not managing the reserves. And you're not managing the overall operating elements that this budget requires. You are actually not managing the finances.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Kiani, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I strongly support this budget. As a Labour-led council, we are committed to our borough and recognize that if we want to continue to be an outstanding council, we cannot stand idle. This is reflected in our willingness to adopt and ongoing commitment to deliver outstanding modern public services so that we can continue to prioritize our residents in both service and delivery of these services. We are taking a systematic approach through rigorous program management. Our major programs are testimony to our commitment to creating a healthier Hounslow. Our social care provides care and support for the needs of over 4,000 of the most vulnerable people in the community. We regularly monitor and, where necessary, scrutinize our social care plan and policies through our adult and social care system reform program to ensure that the users of these services are benefiting from them in the intended manner and that we are able to deliver our services to those that need them and as quickly as possible. In addition to this, our public health outreach team is working diligently alongside other NH service providers to cater for the needs of children and young people, as well as recognizing and suitably managing the needs of an increasingly elderly population who have specific health issues such as dementia and mobility impairment. We are committed to working with our partners across our integrated care system, and our children and young people's mental health program will ensure that the right support is available for those who need it. Mr. Mayor, we as a council recognize that a healthier Hounslow begin in mitigating factors which result in poor health in the first place. This is done by focusing on preventative methods such as increased physical activity, improving air quality, and positive mental health. Hounslow has some of the best health and leisure facilities and outdoor spaces in London, and our aim is to use these for the benefit of our residents. The council is committed to improving the borough's air quality by encouraging alternative means of transport. This is facilitated by the provision of safe cycling and walking routes and good public transport options. In addition to this, we aim to roll out more than 2,000 additional vehicle charging points for vehicular use. These interventions are vital stepping stones towards our vision for low carbon neighborhoods and in turn a healthier Hounslow. As part of this, we are promoting communication and engagement within the community to raise awareness of the importance of increased physical activity across the age spectrum to reduce health inequalities. Our aim is to promote long-term healthy behaviors and create environments which further enhance mental and physical well-being of the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. Councillor John Todd.
Thanks very much. I think the first time money's been mentioned is when Councillor McGregor spoke. We're asked to absorb a report of 255 pages, and for Councillor Rudgewood to say that there's evidence there of credibility, prudence, and oversight, I challenge. Indeed, there's a report went to council, to cabinet rather, last month, called the third party spend, and it helpfully told us that they've started doing a look at the 21-2 figures, and they found that we overpaid invoices to the sum of £450,000. Secondly, the report goes on to say a review is due because given the significant expenditure and lack of value for money reviews. Lack of value for money reviews. That's a very significant statement, and that's done by an outside party. I think the finance director, takes a very hard but pragmatic approach in his report. He doesn't say it's all sunny and rosy. He says he's got great concerns. He projects in some areas that our reserves, which were 231 million in November and is now 200, will go down to 178 in a few years' time. Now, what's so significant is the report makes great play of, for the first time, using reserves to match the balance for next year. It shows 6.9 million. What the papers don't readily show is that in the December Cabinet papers, the Cabinet took £30 million from reserves. £30 million from reserves. And you probably recall with our shiny young leader.
Would you take an intervention?
No. Sorry, you interrupted me. Our shiny leader said in May that they'd never dabble with the reserves. You touch on treating society and old people and the community. Look at the fees and charges. What do you think the residents of Sandbanks are going to say when they see their weekly rent has gone up from 1,034 by £395 a week? Is that kindness? Is that you taking care of the elderly? Where are they going to get that 400 quid from? You all talk the wonderful rhetoric about doing wonderful things, there's no evidence of you being kind and passionate whatsoever.
Don't increase the interest rate.
The other thing that worries me greatly, and my colleague Ron mentioned it, sorry, Ron, is the one Hounslow project. Sorry, I missed the joke, sorry. I know he is, yeah, they always are. They always are. I'm glad you can laugh at this. It's very amusing, I know. What's very interesting, Gerald picked up on the lack of any capital. In fact, it's a large amount of money carried forward every year of capital. But at the moment, there are no projects in the pipeline for capital, and you're relying on the delivery plan, which is part of One Hounslow, to justify your financial vacuum. That concerns me greatly. Picking up briefly on the subject of air pollution, I think we all readily endorse. And we readily endorse what a killer, and I think Councillor Dunn mentioned it, PM 2.5, that lethal powder that comes from tyres and brakes, very difficult to stop, that inhibits child's lungs to the extent you see, unfortunately, one or more die. Councillor Dunn has got to answer many questions. But what I'm troubled is we declared a climate emergency.
Councillor Todd, last minute.
Okay, my last sentence. In September 2001, we gave the Cabinet over £2 million to buy some new air pollution kits. As of today, we only have only two in this borough PM 2.5 readers. That's a disgrace. That shows apathy or indifference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Siddiqui.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think I will look at what my honourable friend McGregor just said in terms of our kind of investment in our own people, investment in systems and processes of this council, and investment in managing the entire council in a better manner. This is what the investment is all. The number of the laundry list you went through, these are the investments which are to be made. Because don't forget, this is one of the biggest council in the country. It needs the processes, it needs the audit, it needs value for money to be delivered. To do all that, we need to continue to invest in systems. What do you mean to say that we will not invest in our own council? I think that's a very sad state of affairs. And you must kind of consider that in order to run the council, no, I would not. Sir, you had your chance. So I would ask you to rest a little bit while. So we need to continue to invest in capabilities, our council employees, and our capital investment program to improve our systems. This is what is required. And that is why people voted us, because we manage this council better than anything else. And we always deliver to our residents and our valued voters. So I think probably your intervention was a little bit out of place. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Siddiqui. Councillor Mashisho.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as we know, central government, as Councillor Thompson has already mentioned, helps all councils to get their finance in place. However, this administration fails to mention central government. They're more interested in attacking central government rather than serving the people it actually supposed to serve. Let's have a look at some of the announcements from the budget from our Chancellor. £1 billion in household support extended for a further 2 years. That is not been mentioned at all by anyone on the red side. We look at the school budget. I know Councillor Mayor talked about his son, and I congratulate him, and what a great school Heathland School is. Councillor Grua and I went to that school. But there's £2.3 billion given to the schools in the schools budget this year and next by the Chancellor. Again, something the central government is doing, something that the guys on the red side will not talk about. And indeed, what Councillor Thompson also mentioned was that this has been the best settlement for councils since 2010. I'll repeat that. It's been the best settlement for councils since 2010. And yet, we see this Labour administration talking that they have not been supported. So I've yet to see Councillor Rajawat and his colleagues come up to this chamber and say that their departments or each department has found savings here and there. In fact, to credit Councillor Rajawat, when he was the finance officer, he did exactly this in my first year as councillor. He did exactly this, where he looked to his cabinet officers and cabinet colleagues, and he says, "Go away and find me some savings." They didn't. So I guess what? Because they couldn't find savings, I tell you what they did find. They found an ever-expanding council. They found more HR costs that costs our residents in their pockets each and every single year.
Councillor Mashisho, would you take an intervention?
No, I will not.
Fair enough.
It would help you.
So they keep laughing, but they're costing their residents to their pockets at the tune of the maximum percentage of council tax rise, which is, was it 4.99%. So you keep laughing whilst people are struggling. And
Could I raise a point of order?
So no, if I can allow to continue, sir.
On what? Yes, what about, yes, on what?
So,
On what?
yeah, that's the thing. I don't know the exact letter and number, so but it's about telling the truth.
Point of order.
He is seriously suggesting that we haven't
No,
found
that-
savings over the
no,
last
no, not
13
point of
years.
order, no.
Unbelievable.
No, carry on.
Unbelievable.
Councillor Mashisho, carry on.
The last section, if you look on page 38, they talk about the inflation that is going to be staying high for some time. But in actual fact, inflation will be half by the end of this year. So I don't know where the pessimism comes from with this administration, but it's clearly costing residents into their pockets. So, and finally, Councillor Dunn attributed the Conservative government as the founders or the inducers of cost of living to our residents. In fact, the cost of living and the energy crisis was caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Last 1 minute, Councillor Mashisho.
Let's remember that Russia used to be called a red state. Now, so their actions are hitting our less well-off the most, and they have nothing to show for it. This budget, Mr. Mayor, demonstrates that the cost of living is actually indeed the cost of the Labour administration. And that's why I would not be supporting this budget tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Mashisho. Councillor Noreen Kalim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This council is committed to making Hounslow one of the most livable and safest boroughs in London, where our residents can enjoy their lives and the communities. This budget helps us along that journey, and I'm proud to commend it to the council. Mr. Mayor, as the Conservative government squeezes council and household budgets further, we will do everything we can to make Hounslow a great place to live, work, and study. From building 1,000 new homes to £650 million HRA new build program, our vision is clear. It is to lead the way in providing good quality and affordable homes for people on different incomes. We believe the two go hand in hand. We also want to ensure there's room for growth in the borough for new and existing families. However, we're not just building houses, we are building homes and helping to improve, sustain, and generate the communities around them. New and affordable homes, investment in infrastructure, and a thriving commercial sector are all key ingredients for regenerating and enhancing the flourishing communities of Hounslow. Thanks to over 12 years of Conservative mismanagement, there is a national need for more housing, which is evident in Hounslow. There are simply not enough affordable quality homes for people. Therefore, as a council, we are working actively to meet this growing need. despite the lack of help from central government. As a council, we are acutely aware the housing crisis has led to greater overcrowding, increased homelessness, unaffordable house prices, and rent rises which have outpaced earnings. With a growing population in Hounslow, it's clear to see the increasing demand for housing must be tackled head-on. This budget will not solve our housing crisis. Only a Labour government will do that, but it sets us on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noreen Kaleem. Councillor Buddha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to talk mostly on fees and charges, but if I could just pick up on a couple of points that have been made today. If Councillor Unsa Chowdhury wants to criticise us for talking, we've had laughter and all sorts this evening. But also, just to let you know, you can't take the moral high ground, because throughout my motion on damp and mould, the cabinet member for housing was talking to a colleague next to her. Secondly, we supported your white ribbon campaign, and thank you for that. But we made the point that we shouldn't exclude men who are also subject to violence. And I'd like to raise the point about homophobia again. We do not have a good enough policy in place to tackle homophobic attack, and you must move on that. 4 years of abuse is too long. Thirdly, I'm very pleased that the big skip idea is already being progressed, but your words were pulling together an action plan for a pilot. That's not a policy in place. That's just an internal process. It's been piloted in Wandsworth over several years. You could just go with that scheme, which is what we've based ours on. But back to fees and charges. First, a thank you to the finance team led by Clive for retaining the comparatives, current charge and proposed charge, which was a change I asked for several years ago. I still consider the list of fees and charges as overly complex and organised by council department, not service or need. I think it also needs 3 more columns: the number of charges purchased, the amount raised, and the percentage increase or decrease for the most recent year, because it's impossible to tell which of the charges has a significant value to residents and businesses and to the council, and whether increases deter purchases and therefore the need for or attractiveness of services. To move on, you won't be surprised to hear, given my work through the Chiswick Shops Task Force and as retail spokesman for our group, that I'm glad to see that some fees and charges for retailers have not been increased, as our traders are still struggling to recover from the pandemic, which followed a previously tricky retail climate. However, I am disappointed that the fees for markets and street stalls have not increased, as they have a significantly damaging effect on bricks and mortar shops. I know this from analyses done by bricks and mortar traders. A weekend market organiser pays £125.46 for a licence for 6 months, plus £13.52 a market day. That means that the cost to the organiser is £34.43 per market day. Meanwhile, a cafe or restaurant has to pay many thousands a year in rent and rates, insurance, utilities, on health and safety measures and more. The square footage of a market is much larger than most cafes, shops and restaurants. The business rates bill would be huge, as would be the rent. These fees and charges are wrong and do not help councillors achieve one of our important roles, emphasised in member development training this year, to promote and champion local economic growth in the borough so we can retain more business rates locally. Markets and street stalls do not pay business rates, yet they put business rate paying businesses at risk. Additionally, many markets bring in traders from outside the borough and outside London, which means, and this was the point that you made, Councillor Meir, that the Hounslow pound doesn't stay in Hounslow. Yet retaining the Hounslow pound is one of the council's aims, as reinforced by you this evening, Councillor Meir. Instead, the Hounslow pound is driven out of the borough to be spent miles away. That's a double whammy risk to business ratepayers. I'm also very concerned about the increases in charges for leisure activities. We should not deter activities such as a family swim, up by nearly 10%. The cost of dying in the borough, that's going up by around 10% too. There are also some enormous increases where costs were zero. For example, reopening a brick grave for a resident is now £913, and for a non-resident is now £2,738, up from nothing. Why wasn't there a charge before, And why is that failure of planning not changed incrementally?
Councillor Biddulph, last 1 minute.
Thank you. Rather than increased by a sudden massive hike. I'm glad to see that the cost of PCNs hasn't increased. After all, the current rate per fine for the council is raking in millions from unwanted road closures that are confusing and badly signed, tricking drivers into being fined. Mr. Mayor, in the most recent overview and scrutiny meeting at which this budget was on the agenda, I made the point that our residents are dealing with the cost of living crisis by turning down their thermostats, reducing the hours their heating is on, sleeping under and wearing many layers. And I asked what the council was doing as an equivalent by trimming its costs. We know it isn't. Instead, we have an overdraft budget and increases in fees and charges that will hit the less well-off the most. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Rajawat's budget is tone deaf. It's tone deaf to the need of residents and business ratepayers. I'm not proud of that.
Thank you, Councillor Biddulph. Councillor Rashid Bhatti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to make what is in effect my maiden speech. I'm proud that against unprecedented turmoil brought about by the Tories' disastrous mismanagement of the national economy and by their ever-tightening squeeze on local government finances, we, however, are not only protecting but enhancing our green spaces. We are committed to planting 20,000 trees across the course of this administration, which will help tackle air pollution and climate change. We already have among the best parks in London, and we have committed a further £5 million to our parks and new master plans in this administration. We have brought forward our green and blue infrastructure strategy that will see us build a borough that is 45% green in the next 3 years and improve our waterways. And we have launched Grow for the Future, a first of its kind policy in the UK to turn 27 acres of unused land across Hounslow into allotments, community gardens, and orchards where families can grow food in a cost of living crisis. Uniquely, each site will be paired with a local school so that urban kids can learn about sustainability, biodiversity, and healthy living. Mr. Mayor, despite huge challenges, we're aiming to reduce the council's carbon emissions by 50% by 2026 towards a target of net zero by year 2030. And we have already fitted around 30 schools and 30 corporate buildings with energy saving and energy generating technology to reduce their carbon footprint and save money on bills. We're improving the borough's air quality by investing safe walking and cycling routes and working with partners such as Transport for London to provide good public transport options for our residents. And we're rolling out more than 2,000 additional electric vehicle charging points to enable a transition to less polluting vehicles. We are ambitious for Hounslow and our residents, and we are proud to be playing our part in combating global climate change while making our borough a greener and a healthier place to live. I therefore commend this budget, which underpins those ambitions and should give us all hope for a green and sustainable future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatti. Councillor Rajwat, can you conclude this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am so incredibly proud of the Labour side. Tonight, we have shown why we are the administration and you are consigned to the backwaters of Chiswick. But there are some points. Let's respond to those very, very briefly. A couple of our speakers talked about the single biggest increase in funding. What they didn't tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is that those increases are still below what we were funded in 2010. When you add in inflation, it's a real-time cut. They have presided over a cut. And let me tell you this. You attack Mayor Khan, but let me let you into a little secret. His increase in the precept, who was it agreed by? The Tory government! So I'll take no lectures from him because it is because of them that police numbers have been cut. It is their games that has underfunded TfL. And it is our mayor, Mayor Khan, who will remain mayor of London, that is fixing their problems. And of course, they don't want to address it. They don't want to talk about net zero. They don't want to talk about inflation. And I believe there's social care reforms that are ticking over. I think we just give up on those, like they've given up on vulnerable and elderly people. I think only Councillor Todd actually cares about them, because if you really cared, there would be reforms
Point of
in
order.
place. That's
On
not a
what-
point of order, I can tell you that now.
Are we able to check the facts? Is he talking? Or is he? Is he
No.
allowed to just blabber on, or can we actually?
No, you had opportunity. You had an opportunity. You raised this, and now he's answering to your facts and figures. If you have facts and figures, you can give it now.
Yeah, those facts are wrong that he's giving at the moment, but I'll send you an email.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, a point of order is on the constitutional matter, not
the
on
facts.
trying to correct a speech. Could we limit it to that, please?
Come on, Councillor Rajat. You can carry on.
It's all right, Councillor Mashisha. You stay in the dark ages. It's not a problem for us. So, whilst they are doing something around the edges, raiding our reserves, bankrupting the council, trying to privatise it, let me just recap what in the last 9 months, last year, this administration has already achieved. Transforming community experience, independent living programme, locality working with community hubs, warm spaces, cost of living workshops, violence against women and girls strategy, developing the EDI strategy, every school good or outstanding, support for the poorest families on school holidays, the young person's guarantee, speedy response to a heat wave in the summer of 22. We started to achieve home building targets in less than a year in, improved relations with external partners, safer routes from school, rainbow crossings, enhanced digital inclusion work and digital commitment, collaboration with partners to improve access to job vacancies, the skills escalator, and ensuring all contractors and our own staff pay the London living wage. Mr. Mayor, there really is only one overdraft in this country, and that is that Tory government. But don't worry, everyone, because this Labour government is on its way, and it will close their account once and for all. And finally, on a very, very serious note, I think we'll all agree on this. Can I once again extend my thanks to Clive, Rupa, Patrick, Ben and Adil, who are set here, and all the finance team who do such a stellar work for us. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be great. And we are incredibly great. So really, this is a budget for the residents of Hounslow, with them at the heart of everything we do.
Thank you, Councillor Rajwat, and thank you all the members who contributed today. And now we just move on to recorded vote on 19 recommendations on agenda item 5. And I request Clive to take it up from here.
So members are voting for the substantive budget paper, against the substantive budget paper, or abstaining. Councillor Ahmed.
For.
Councillor Akram.
For.
Councillor Asim.
For.
Councillor Atwell here. Councillor Bath. Councillor Batty.
For.
Councillor Biddulph.
Against.
Councillor Bowing.
For.
Councillor Bruce.
For.
Councillor Butt.
For.
Councillor Samir Chowdhury.
For.
Councillor Unsa Chowdhury.
For.
Councillor Chopra. Councillor Croft,
For.
Councillor Dunn,
For.
Councillor Emsley,
Against.
Councillor Farmerhan, Councillor Foot, Councillor Giles,
Against.
Councillor Ajimagul,
For.
Councillor Prittam Goul,
For.
Councillor Shivraj Goul, Councillor Vikram Goul, Councillor Gull,
For.
Councillor Joseph,
Against.
Councillor Kaleem, Councillor Cameron,
For.
Councillor Kiani,
For.
Councillor Lal,
For.
Councillor Lambert,
For.
Councillor Lukey,
For.
Councillor Malik,
For.
Councillor Mann, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Junamir, Councillor Heenamir, Councillor Mitchell,
For.
Councillor Mashisho,
Against.
Councillor Nagwa,
For.
Councillor Perisotto,
For.
Councillor Rajawat,
For.
Councillor Raja,
For.
Councillor Raymond,
For.
Councillor Sampson,
For.
Councillor Sarai, Councillor Shaheen,
For.
Councillor Marina Sharma,
For.
Councillor Jagdish Sharma,
For.
Councillor Sidhu, Councillor Siddiqui,
For.
Councillor Smith,
For.
Councillor Stroud-Turp,
For.
Councillor Tack,
Against.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Todd, Councillor Umair, and Councillor Williams.
For.
The recommendations are therefore supported.
Thank you, Clive. Now let's move to agenda item 6, pay policy statement 2023-24, reference report, Borough Council. I invite Councillor Shatrul Rajvat to propose the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was quite something, so I'm going to stay seated for this one. The pay policy statement is a report that's required by law. So colleagues have the statement in front of them. I'll just draw out a few items from there. Just a couple of key things on there. In terms of the London living wage, it came up in the debate just a moment ago, but we are reviewing the implementation of that. So in the past, there's been a slight lag between the announcement of the London living wage and staff receiving it. We are changing that so that it's received in the month, the earliest opportunity after it is announced. I'm really pleased to report to Council that the pay ratio, which is the ratio of pay top earner versus the bottom, remains stable versus last year. And our pay multiple remains at 5.8, which I would say is appropriate for the size and complexity of any authority. And it is worth noting that our ratio is lower than that of our neighbouring boroughs as well. And across the average, currently published pay multiple, which is 6.54, which is quite positive. Most proud in this report is around the gender pay gap. The gender pay gap has decreased from 2.5% to 0, and our mean has also decreased from 5. Yep, it is very good news. Our mean has also decreased from 5.07 to 3.9%, and that is very, very good news. In terms of gender pay gap, there are a number of initiatives within the report that talk to how we will carry that on. Obviously, we have to appreciate that that can fluctuate and that will fluctuate over time. But with that, I do move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rajvat. Can we have seconder? Councillor Catherine Dunn.
I second the report and reserve my right to speak.
Debate. Councillor Giles.
Thank you very much. I welcome this pay. sorry, we all know the pay policy statement, and appreciate that there have been some changes in those figures over the last year. I think in an organisation where the ratio of men to women in every quartile, apart from the top level, is 1 to 2, I would potentially be looking at the fact that we should be having a figure of 0 and potentially even negative at this point. But I understand that that's going to be a tricky ask. So, but knowing at last year's meeting, I asked for further analysis into why the figure had risen to that 2.58%. And I was told that this was due to small changes at the top level of the organisation. So I'm just kind of wondering what actions have been taken to bring those median figures back to 0, because that hasn't been explained within this report. I had put it down to COVID anomalies at the time. But I think we weren't quite there yet. And I do see that there are a number of actions listed in the report, as you've said, that predominantly focus on recruitment, specifically of entry-level staff. And while there is note of the mandatory equality training, I don't see what the stats are around this. The commentary says that the completion rates have improved, but from what to what? That would also be really quite useful in this. It is all very well to have mandatory training. I note that the council has also sponsored attendance at the IGPP Women in Leadership course, but I wonder if this is enough, especially as I would expect the council to want to retain and nurture talent to grow from within the organisation. To go back to Councillor McGregor's point about churn rates, it's also a great retention tool. And I see that there is an OD leadership and learning team cohort, which is all very promising. But even there, in the ratio of representation, it doesn't mirror the gender split within the organisation, just by one person. Just as an observation. So I think one last point is noting the median and mean pay gaps. While we may be comparable to neighbouring boroughs, we're still above the London average for 2021, according to the stats. So I'd like to know what we could do to actually make that a bit more on par with the London average, if in case, or at least set that as an objective for the next year. That'd be quite useful. But basically, thank you very much for this report, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Ghazalabat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important report. The content of the report links perfectly with our commitment to a thriving Hounslow. In order to meet our aspirations as a council, we need to be able to attract the best chief officers. It is worth nothing that our current chief executive is now the longest serving in London, a testament to our values. We believe our pay policy to be appropriate for the size and complexity of the authority, and it compares favorably with the pay in the private and public sectors. We are also in line with our neighboring boroughs. The Foresight Society, in a statement earlier this week, made reference to the many accommodations which go towards narrowing the pay gap. Flexible working, clear career pathways, encouraging men to take parental leave, and tackling workplace bullying and harassment. I am really pleased that Hounslow meets every single one. This statement shows progress in a positive direction, and I am confident that we won't sit on our laurels. We still have room to improve, and I look forward to next year's report, which will show more progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Councillor Gul.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to talk on our pay policy statement. Our pay policy committed to promoting a flourishing borough to provide an equal opportunity by having regard individual skills, experience, and potential for receiving employment with fair pay. Equality diversity, and fairness are the key objectives of our policy. Of course, we are committed to ensuring that hard work is properly remuneration in the with equality and fairness. Our pay policy is drawn absolutely according to the council legal and professional requirements. Pay is fundamental to the council annual spending, and our policy aim to accomplish transparency between the highest and lowest paid jobs. The administration further recognizes the importance of workforce reflecting the vibrancy and diversity that make Hounslow such a special place. Mr. Mayor, the gender gap data allows us to scrutinize any imbalance between the wages of men and women, to understand and identify different potential causes of the gender gap base. As per the gender pay gap reporting of March 2022, our median wage gap has decreased from 2.58 to 0%. Much like members, the role of the officer is highly subject to intense scrutiny. This administration recognizes this and how professionally our officers deal with the national challenges that plays out locally. Our pay policy has clear intention to recruit the talented officers with the competitive salaries to deliver the plans for the well-being of our local residents. Mr. Mayor, I offer my sincere thanks to all officers for the work they do since inflation is increased at the global level, especially 10% within the UK. Our dedicated officers continue to commit working beyond their contractual hours without an increase in their pay. Unlike the opposition, we value our workforce and how they regularly go above and beyond their job roles to ensure our residents and business are supported. This was not only evidenced during the pandemic, but also during the cost of living crisis. We are also pleased to see that our investment in human resources or occupational development at the end of the last administrations are paying dividends. Council should remember that the Tories sought to take out this investment in their budget amendments. How wrong they were. Mr. Mayor, being a councillor and on the behalf of the Labour Group, I strongly support this pay policy and request to the opposition and support and vote in the favor of this policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Gul. Councillor Rajvat, can you conclude, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Gull and Councillor Butt for their contributions, and actually Councillor Charles as well. Councillor Charles, you raised a number of things. If you don't mind, I'll take them from the minutes and I'll write back and include them in the minutes for next meeting as an action. And I once again move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Rajvat. So we asked the members for two recommendations, one for noting and one for agreeing. Can we vote on that, please? That's easy. Thank you. Agenda item 7, member scheme allowance 2023-24. Again, Councillor Rajvat, it's all your show today.
It is. Anybody would say I love myself, which I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a regular report that comes to council every year. Members will recall a number of years ago when we reviewed the member scheme of allowance, we pegged any future increases to allowances to the pay award that staff receive. This report formalises that arrangement and also talks about increases in the dependent allowance and the London living wage. I move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Rajvat. Seconded.
I second the report. Reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Councillor Joanna Biddulph, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, I think, the 5th time I've stood up to talk about members' allowances, and I will be saying the same as I've said 4 times before in a minute. As Councillor Rajawat's just said, we have already agreed that members' allowances should be increased in line with staff pay, and I still agree with that. The point, however, is that whatever we receive, we must show our value to residents and business ratepayers. The basic allowance doesn't reflect the workload of an engaged, hardworking, proactive councillor. To quote the councillor's document, it's intended to recognise the time commitment of all councillors, including calls on time such as meetings with officers and constituents and attendance of political groups. It recognises time spent. It doesn't recompense for time spent. In my first year as a councillor, 2018, the magazine First, which we all receive, published a survey which found that councillors spend on average 22 hours a week on council business, 8 of which are in meetings such as this one. For those of us with jobs, these hours are spent outside our own working lives. A less busy councillor receives the same as the busiest councillor. Even though it might be pennies per hour for some, many residents think it is still too much, no matter how hard a councillor works. There is resentment amongst some that we receive anything for what we do. Mr. Mayor, that's why I'm standing here saying the same as before. We must all work hard to demonstrate value for money. This isn't our money, it's our residents and our business ratepayers' money. We must demonstrate to them that we are worth it.
Mr. Mayor, can I propose suspension of standing orders just in case? It is a budget meeting, but just to make sure we go beyond the 2.5.
We done, yeah. So anyone else wants to speak? Councillor Siar Raza.
Good evening, all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity. I had to sort of just look at where I was. Was it in London Borough of Hounslow or the London Mayor's budget office? Because that's what the Tories were just talking about. It's just the London Mayor budget, but this is actually the London Borough of Hounslow's budget. So just talking briefly about these special allowances. So members of council are committed to ensuring smooth operation of the council. In many instances, the commitment resulting in us investing a lot of time and resources towards the fulfillment of these duties. For those members entrusted with additional special responsibilities on top of our role as councillor, the workload is significantly greater, and the SRAs are an acknowledgement of this. As a Labour majority council, no members may receive more than one post of responsibility that warrants an SRA, and the proposed increased rate of SRA is less than 1%. Members allocated special responsibility role often find themselves working full-time hours while not being given suitable allowance to match the number of hours worked. Moreover, members who are receiving SRI tend to use it to invest in resources and equipment which will help them carry out their duties within the council more effectively. SRIs ensure that additional support is available, and in doing so help mitigate some of the extra pressures placed on our councillors who have added responsibilities. SRIs are also important in helping attract young and talented people, not only to pursue politics as a career, but also become councillors, but also encourage them to take on the special responsibility roles. Mr. Mayor, I would like to reiterate that the Labour Party councillors do not receive a salary, pension, or any special reimbursements, and the SRA rates are nowhere near energy fat cap profits which drain the economy, which of course Conservatives support. Allowances are paid to make up loss in salary and pension contributions which councillors were able to pay towards until 2014 due to the abolishment by the Conservative government. 2020 saw the first raise in council basic allowance for 10 years. The increased amount was in line with minimum wage raise and actually was cross-party. Moreover, our SRA rates are significantly lower than other neighbouring London boroughs such as Ealing, Hammersmith, Fulham, Kingston, Brent. Allowances are recommended by an independent panel, and any increase is tied to pay increases for our officers. As a Labour-led council, we pride ourselves in creating work environment suited to the needs of all our members, and this includes members with dependents. Therefore, it's totally hypocritical of the Conservative Party to criticise an increase of less than 1% in councillors' allowance when they're the ones responsible for the cost of living crisis in the first place. Mr. Mayor, whilst no one enters local politics for financial gain, no one should be disadvantaged for the work they do to make our borough a better place to live and work. Therefore, I urge Chamber to not only acknowledge the importance of SRA payments, but also support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sarara. Councillor Rajvat.
Thank you,
Councillor Thompson.
Oh, sorry.
Just again, I don't know what we're being accused of now. We're apparently proposing an increase of 1%, which the councillor mentioned twice. But I think there's no percentage within here because it's not being decided. So I think, again, I'll take responsibility for climate change, global warming, world poverty, dirty rivers, whatever else you want to throw at me. But I'm not going to be criticised twice in one speech by my colleague over there for opposing a 1% increase that doesn't exist. So let's get our facts right. I wasn't going to make this point, but since we're making the point out, and firstly, for the record, no Conservative councillor gets any salaries, double allowances, or whatever nonsense that councillor has mentioned. Just to say one thing,
Language, Councillor Thompson.
Pardon me?
Please, we shouldn't use that language. Sorry.
That councillor? I apologise, Mr. Mayor. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
I'm finished, Mr. Mayor. Okay, thank you. Would you not accept that one area where we do need to have a look is that, according to the LGA, no more than 50% of councillors should receive a special responsibility allowance, and in Hounslow, it's 75 or so. So that is a lot of councillors, far more than our professional body recommends, receive an allowance. And I just wonder whether you could, in all conscience, defend all those allowances. And in light of what we were discussing in our not budget earlier, because it wasn't a budget, maybe you could perhaps ponder whether, say, hand on heart, those cabinet assistance posts add value to what we're doing as an authority.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Rajvat, can we conclude, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I mean, Councillor Thompson seems to contradict what Councillor Biddulph said. And actually, I kind of agree with Councillor Biddulph for once, which is unusual for us to agree with one another. But I do say to her very respectfully, there is no such thing as a less busy councillor. All councillors are very, very busy and they do their work very, very well. In terms of Councillor Thompson's point, I think we've gone through that argument. He's more than welcome to look at the minutes when we increased the allowances the first time and pegged them to the pay award as to the rationale behind it. He knows as well as I do that it is a suggestion from the independent body. We don't have to take it, and we've justified it in the report. So I personally do believe that the cabinet assistants add value. I believe the head of the cabinet office adds value. You may not like it, but they add value to the work that we do, and I will fully support them alongside the cabinet and the entire administration as well. And I formally move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Rajvat. Shall we put on to vote then? Yes, agreed. That's good. Agreed. Agenda item 8, calendar for formal committee meetings. Yes, I think both the political groups consulted with each other and you agreed with the...
I'm happy to move it if Councillor Thompson, you're happy to second it. Yeah.
Agreed, thank you. Agenda item 9, any appointments for committees and other bodies? No, none. Thank you. Agenda item 10, decision taken under urgency matters, none. And then next meeting will be an AGM. I was enjoying these, and then that will be my last meeting. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.